Well, welcome everyone. I'm so thrilled to have you on our continued labor forward program that we've been having from 12 to 12:30. We took some time off for the summer, knowing people's schedules, and we're back again with Labor Forward. So from the School for Workers, we welcome you back to the fall semester, the fall season, if you will, and we'll look forward to continuing to see you monthly at this Labor Forward program. So again, for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Alexia Poolwick, and I am an associate professor here at the School for Workers and co-chair of the department. The topic that I really wished to share with everyone today was to share our great news and excitement over hiring 2 new assistant professors, and to introduce you to our new faculty hires so that they can get to know our labor community as we get to know them. So I'm so thrilled to have with us now both our 2 new faculty hires, Dr. Ericka Wills and Dr. Lola Loustaunau. Lola, please tell me if I've butchered that name a little bit. And so both Ericka and Lola have joined our faculty with really impressive backgrounds. And I would like them to speak to that today and to introduce themselves to everyone. But before I do that, I'll just give a real quick introduction myself. Dr. Ericka Wills moved from Colorado Springs to be with us here in Madison and to be with the School for Workers community, and we are so grateful for that. Dr. Wills has a PhD from Illinois State University, and she did her dissertation that involved labor literature and social movements. And I can certainly say from what I've seen, she has a great knowledge of the social movements and their history and participation by labor in those. So we're just thrilled to have her there. She has been teaching labor education for a good number of years. She has taught at the University of Colorado. She has taught at the Los Angeles Trade Technical College and the University of Southern California. But really, I think more impressive and more interesting to me is just the great breadth of experience that Ericka has in labor education, in teaching and working with unions throughout the country on projects and on teaching curriculum, and is really a dynamic addition to the department. And Dr. Loustaunau is similarly impressive, and we're so excited to have Lola here with us as well. She's just finished her PhD at the University of Oregon, and she did her dissertation looking at the precarious nature of work, things that happen with the scheduling of the workforce and the unequal scheduling and how that impacts society and workers, and also specifically looking at the impact of the precarious nature of work of meat processing workers and the challenges that they have faced. So we're really impressed and excited about that research as well. When Lola was at University of Oregon, she did some very impressive academic research and qualitative research at the university, but she also brings great experience in labor education, having worked at the University of Oregon Labor Center, as well as her work on her PhD. So both of these candidates have really proven that they can bring both the scholarship that the School for Workers needs, has interest and involvement in the community over a lot of years, and a great deal of experience in labor education. So Ericka, I think I will turn to you first and just ask you to introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit more about your experience in labor education.
Sure, thank you, Alexia. Yeah, so I've been teaching as a labor educator for unions and for universities, graduate students and undergraduates for about 12 years now. And I think I'm what you would consider a very boots on the ground sort of person. If there's a action, a labor dispute, difficult contract negotiations, that's where I want to be. And I want to be providing the education and the resources to be able to support the labor movement through that process. And so my background in labor education is both doing more traditional courses like labor history, collective bargaining, the basics of labor law, labor in America. One of my favorites, which I'm going to give a pitch to, is labor film. I love doing labor film. It's a fantastic way to learn history and cultural aspects and everything. But outside of that, what I've done a lot with is actually going to the communities where there are difficult situations, whether it be organizing campaigns, labor disputes, getting community involvement for collective bargaining campaigns, and doing educational programs that are both for the membership and also engage the community around them to create the kind of broad-based coalitions that we need to have success in the labor movement. And that's something that I see as happening across the United States, that that Wisconsin has been an epicenter for a lot of these fights. And we have a history in this and a lot of knowledge from here to bring to other places. And then we tailor what the situation looks like there, what the culture's like, what the politics are like, what the community's like, and create sort of grassroots, bottom-up education to be able to support what's going on. So that's really kind of my philosophy and my engagement in labor education over, the last decade or so.
Thank you. It certainly is so impressive, and the engagement with community is such a priority, I think, here in Wisconsin, and such a priority at the School for Workers. So knowing your experience in that is just so delightful. Lola, how about yourself?
Yes. Hi, Alexia. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. And actually, now I'm like tempted to take Ericka's classes, honestly. That film class sounded amazing. So my background on we consider, outside traditional unions and their communities. So a lot of what I've done goes hand in hand with my research, a little bit of boots in the ground, like she was saying, of like going into processes of collective organizing and making myself available as, to educate, to construct curricula with workers for what they need, what their community needs. Particularly, I've done things around union busting, how to inoculate, workers who might not have ever been part of a union campaign, and how to navigate intense union busting that we see in a lot of industries, right? More and more. So a lot of the work also that I've done in the Labor and Education Research Center at Oregon has to do with racial and gender inequalities, both within unions and, in the workplace, right? So a lot of my focus, and that I invite everyone to do workshops of that kind, or facilitate workshops of that kind, have to do with unpacking the inequality regimes that persist within our organizations, perhaps without intentionality, right? How can we make our labor movement more inclusive? How can we bring in those who have been historically left out? So that's part of that's, I guess, the priority for me, and the type of expertise that I'm bringing here.
Yeah, thank you both so much for that. And I'm going to reverse it here a little bit on you, Lola, and ask you, to just speak a little bit more about the research that you do. So the research that you've done previously, and maybe what you see yourself doing going forward at the School for Workers. Understanding you're still figuring that out, and it's a fluid process, but just giving folks an idea of who you are and what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big things that I've worked in the past, and that I would like to bring to Wisconsin and continue, has to do, as you said, around scheduling practices. And everyone who is a worker today knows that that's one of the biggest issues that we're facing, right? Unpredictable practices that really impact workers' quality of life, right? That impact our families, our communities, because because hours change, incomes change with hours. And there's been a push in different states, right, to pass legislation. So part of my research has to do with Oregon being the first state that passed what's called a Fair Work Week Act, right? So a piece of legislation that is geared towards improving the predictability of worker scheduling in the service industry specifically, right? So that was a big project that I was part of, from doing the background, the base research to try to help pass the law, and then go back and evaluate the impacts and the experiences that workers and employers are having with the implementation of that legislation. So that's the type of research that I'm interested in doing, right? Research that is directly thinking about its public impacts, that is directly helping build institutionalized changes for workers and working families. So another big thing that I've done.
I'm going to cut you off because I have a question.
Okay.
Before you just go on with another area of your research, can you describe for us maybe a couple of examples of the impact of the scheduling practices that you learned about and that led to the policy change in Oregon?
Yeah, so what we know actually with the, there's different strategies, right, that management utilizes when impacting workers' schedules, right? So we have the last minute scheduling, which means that you don't know almost to the day off whether you're working or not and for how many hours you're working, right? So the fluctuation in hours impacts not only your ability to plan your life, right? For example, from a doctor's appointment, your ability to picking up your kids from school or not, for childcare, right? For mental health, for hours that you sleep, right? Unpredictable scheduling practices sometimes mean that workers are doing back-to-back shifts with very few hours in between of rest, right? So the impacts are not only like physical and mental well-being, but as I was saying, they have this expansive effect, right? The expansive effect that we also seen is that children of workers with very unpredictable schedules also have like mental, health, detrimental impacts, right? So they experience more anger, more sadness, right? Because their parents all of a sudden, make plans with them and need to cancel them all the time because they can't take time off for vacation because it's really hard for them, to plan their lives. What the law did is introduce certain limits of how unpredictable the schedules could be. And this has had, as far as we've seen, great impacts on workers. So what we're trying to see is how we can bring that to other states and improve working conditions for service sector workers who are in the majority the ones who are impacted by this. Illinois actually 2 years ago passed a similar Chicago actually passed a similar legislation. So yeah, we are seeing what happens, and if we can bring them to other places like Wisconsin.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I will let you now, keeping an eye on time, so Ericka will have plenty of time, discuss the other area of research that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, so other important aspects of my work relate specifically, to migrant Latinx workers specifically in more industrial sectors, so not so much service, but people specifically in the food processing industry. So as you were mentioning, meat packers, that's something that comes down to our mind when we think about food processing. But also vegetables, fruit, the fruit, frozen fruit that we consume, and also has to do with industrial bakeries, right? All the pastry that is sold in places, in different coffee shops, right? So all the workers who are doing that labor, in many cases, a lot of them, are Latinx and Black workers, and they're doing these jobs, and they're pretty degraded working conditions. As we know, this is a sector that was heavily unionized a few decades ago, but as unfortunately, many other sectors of the economy, there's been an intense union busting and deunionization in the sector. So the working conditions are way worse now than they were in the 1980s and 1970s. So part of my research has to do with understanding the working conditions and the actions that workers have been taking to improve, to resist those degraded working conditions. So this has to do with not only, processes of more traditional collective organizing, but also other forms of kind of huelgas, strikes that many workers have undertook without representation necessarily. So that's another big piece of my work. Yeah. Great. And then there's more things, as I was saying, I did research on union bustings, really tracing what this industry looks like, how much money employers are putting to prevent workers from collectively organizing, and other things like childcare. I'm also doing a little bit of research on childcare workers, right? As precarity is expensive, my research moves with that a little bit. So yeah.
You're doing really exciting work that I know all of us can learn a lot from. I look forward to seeing more about worker actions in the processing industries and what any of us can gather from that. But I want to turn to Ericka and give you the opportunity to speak to either research in the past that you've done that you that you'd like to speak to, or as well in any ideas of what you might be doing here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, absolutely. So the research I've done in the past has always been very informed by the labor disputes or the organizing or the campaigns that I'm involved with on the ground, and the education that I see needing to happen that then reflects what we need to, how we need to message, how we need to publish, not just in academic publications and research, but also to reach larger populations and to reach the working population. And so research for me has always been very important, that it's grounded in those communities and that we're making sure that when we publish and do that research, we're not excluding the communities who need that information the most. So making sure that it's available to them, which is sometimes writing similar things in different ways to be able to meet the communities. And so there's two interconnected things that I've worked in the past and I'm continuing to work with in the future, even though they seem very different. And how I really got into this was doing a lot with the way that we use arts, music, literature to be able to engage and organize people in the labor movement. And that was sort of how my dissertation came about, was looking at those aspects. Well, it became an issue of organizing people using some of those tactics around things that were going on, and then looking at the power structures. And so the research really evolved over time. And so it has increasingly what I have been doing research on and am continuing to do research on in the future is the really unfettered power that Wall Street has today in corporate America, and the impact that that is making for the 12 million workers in the US that are employed by companies whose major shareholder is a Wall Street fund. And so all of a sudden, unions are having to change their tactics on the ground, in their campaigns, on the legislation that they're pushing for, on the fly. Specifically since 2008, this has been an increasing issue with Wall Street investment in corporations. So I've been really involved with that in a couple ways that I've published on, and I'm continuing to do research, including the United Mine Workers Warrior Met Strike, which is happening in Alabama. Right now, it is the longest ongoing strike in the US at this time, and it's the biggest ongoing strike in the US at this time. Over 550 days they've been out. And their major shareholder is a Wall Street fund. So is their second biggest and their third biggest. And it has, it's changed the tactics. It's changed the communication that goes on. It's meant that the shareholders for the coal company itself, where you're met, really aren't beholden to anyone. And so the union is having to evolve corporate campaigns and also on the ground actions to deal with that. Similarly, the Association of Flight Attendants, in conjunction with a variety of unions that represent workers in the airlines, have just launched a campaign called No Stock Buybacks. And this again relates to the Wall Street investment in the big four for airlines: Southwest, Delta, American, and United. Wall Street's the biggest investor. And the Wall Street using stock buybacks really as a greed tool to artificially inflate the prices. Before 1982, you could not do stock buybacks because it was considered artificial market manipulation, and increasing this rich-poor divide that we have in the US by, instead of investing in long-term operations of companies and investing in the workforce, the majority of the liquid cash is used on stock buybacks to give money to the haves and the CEOs and those with stock options, while inflating the price of the stocks that are already out there. And it's something that the unions are having to deal with in the airline industry, where that money has been used in that way instead of with staffing issues, with scheduling. If you've flown, you've seen how insane it is right now. And part of that has to do with these Wall Street greed tools. And so to circle back around, that's kind of one of the main elements of research I'm doing while I'm going to these places, meeting with workers, talking about what impact it has on them, and then creating writing and sometimes art. And sometimes and music is huge on this, to rally people around and educate them on this is the reality in the US right now. This isn't just an academic idea we can publish on, but this is something that impacts your everyday life. And so how do we use these tools of education and the arts to be able to communicate and to organize and to have workers more fully understand these things that they live every day and the way that these power dynamics impact their life, so that ideally, we're going to go to Washington and we're going to lobby in the Capitol and we're going to create regulations and change, right? And these are all intersecting, interconnected elements that I think come together, bringing in the education, the research, the organizing, and the arts, that I see as this holistic package.
I'll just sort of, as I'm listening to you, what I see the focus is, one, on the power of who's controlling all of the issues for workers and not just going to your local folks, and if I understand the buyback, so there's money within a corporation that they could be spending on changing conditions, and instead they're using that money to purchase their own stock so that the stockholders earn from it, right?
Exactly what's happening. And we need to, it's a misunderstood process in a lot of ways. And it's something that was illegal. And we could create and push for legislation that changes the way that happens in the future. And that's something that we need grassroots movements through unions, especially for the 12 million workers who are impacted by this, to understand why that kind of legislation is important. So the research really needs to result in, how do we create legislative and on the ground change from the bottom up.
I want to also clarify, so even as you're looking at that power structure and what we might be able to do about it, I'm fascinated, but you're also looking at workers' power and how there's these areas that I don't always think about. I mean, it's certainly music on the picket lines, right? Like I've seen that, but some of these other more artistic elements I think are really interesting, and I take it you'll want to be speaking with Wisconsin workers about different methods that they're using in building their power, right?
Absolutely. And related to that, there's one other small thing. I'll take just a couple of seconds here to push, which is the Wisconsin connection to some of this, which is that that the women in the building trades have a committee, a group called Empower, where they are really using all of these things to look at issues with women in the building trades that are facing, how we get more women into the building trades, how we create solidarity within that, and then how we create things like childcare centers and other structural ways to support women in the trades and to get more women to come into the trades. And so that's a very Wisconsin-based project that I'm working on to look at how do we organize and create this and look at, I mean, there's a lot of intersection between our own work. How do we look at the gender issues and get people on the same page? So I just want to give a pitch to that and the work that Empower does as well.
So for both of you, in just a minute or two, things that we should expect to maybe be hearing from you. So what you'll be reaching out to the community to work on specific projects. Any thoughts or words you want to say about what you see coming for you here in the near future? Where we'll be reaching out to our community that will be relevant to your work, because I'm just wondering if you have anything to opine on that.
That for me.
Okay, then instead.
Yes, my main priority, I think, right now is to continue to reach out to, what we've named as essential workers, right, throughout the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that points into this really important role that a lot of workers behind the scenes, right, and the forgotten factories, the places we don't think about that often, are doing. So, you can expect to hear from me as I try to reach out and continue, and start building relationships here in Wisconsin with folks who are these very important workers, who are, again, an essential workforce, and that are facing, really unique struggles, unique challenges. another thing that I kind of wanted to, highlight from the connections that me and Eric have, right? It has to do with what you can hear from me is also that I'm available to hear from you, in the sense that I'm interested in doing research that is a tool, right? That is a tool for worker power, that is a tool for policy transformations, that is a tool for community building. So I want to, kind of put myself out there, in the sense that I'm like here to go out there and work with different unions, with organizations, and try to build research that works for them, for you, that works for workers, and bring the expertise that I have, and in any capacity that I can, to make that a reality. And I do think research can be a powerful tool. So that's kind of, kind of what you can expect from me.
And I'll just say to everyone, if you go to our website, right, schoolforworkers.edu, is that right? And that you will see much more information on both Ericka and Lola. And I'm saying this at this point, contact information. I think your email should already be up there as well. I'm so sorry. Schoolforworkers.wisc.edu. I knew I didn't say it right. Thank you. You will find your bios and our contact info there as well. And so if listening to this, right, Lola says that she wants to hear from people and she's open to that, please feel free. I'll also say, Ericka, in whatever fashion you might want, do you want to say anything else to folks in our local labor community or School for Workers community? Any sort of last thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, similarly to the question that you asked, I want to know what labor disputes are going on, or what organizing campaigns you have, or what your needs are on the ground, and be able to tailor education to be able to support you in that. Research wise, specifically, if you're, a woman in the trades and you're facing some of these issues, I would love to talk to you about that and look more at ideas that you have for us to address those issues and get women in the trades as kind of a holistic project. And particularly if you're at a company, which would be like, I believe 450 some of the 500 S&P top 500s that are majority shareholder is a Wall Street fund, and you are trying to deal with that issue. I would love to talk to you about the tactics that may be working for you, or give you ideas, or get you in communication with people as we try to, as a labor movement, look at this shifting power dynamic. So, but basically across the board, if you need something, we're here for you, right? Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you both so very much. I'll just, in reaction to what Ericka said, I mean, even since she's technically been here in Madison, she spent much more of her time on the ground at these labor disputes, providing services and education as they're needed, and strategizing and learning from you folks. So really impressive. It makes me tired to just listen to everything she's been doing. So thank you both so very much. We're so excited to have you. Really happy to have them here. And then I will just want to remind folks of our next Labor Forward. And my computer is just sort of messed up here, but please do come and join us in another couple of weeks for the next Labor Forward session. I think that Armando Ibarra will be interviewing someone for that session. And I know that we're just going to continue learning from everyone in our community. And I thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right. I think we're all set. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Thanks for joining us.